Thanks, Blake. Let me get my little kit together here. Got some cheat sheets. I hope you guys don't mind. Blake promised me you guys were a very forgiving audience, but he didn't tell me you'd be so big. I mean, together. So, as you know, my name's Steve Fischer. I'm obviously not from around here, but I'm actually currently living in the center of the universe, Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah. I flew last night from Lake Placid, New York, where I'm visiting in-laws, because my wife and I, we just had a little baby, 6 weeks old. So I've decided to give you a slideshow of my baby pictures. That's us crying. That's us not crying. There's more in that sequence, but I'll spare you. We'll get to the serious stuff here. So yesterday, a friend asked me why I was going to Atlanta, and I said, I was doing a talk at the CreativeMornings something or other, and she said, oh, is that when you explain to people how to multitask between video editing, changing diapers, making coffee, and booking flights? I said, yes, that's what it's all about. So you're probably asking, okay, what exactly is a professional kayaker and what does he have in common with creativity? Okay. Well, I'll ask a few of my own questions as well. But, you know, I haven't done much to change the world, but I've spent my whole life making a profession out of running rivers all over the world, as Blake explained. And the river has taught me everything, I believe, that I need to know for the rest of my life. I also have a successful video production company in Asheville. And although I haven't learned a whole lot about business, once again, I use the skills and the experiences on the river as I make decisions and all of that, and as I take action, of course. So I'll share a few of those little experiences with you and hopefully plant a few tiny seeds of inspiration for your day. So when I was asked to do it, I also asked myself, okay, why me? What have I got to offer a bunch of creative professionals? I'm kind of entering that scene. I wish I could hear from you guys. I'm sure there's a lot of great lessons to be had there, but I took the gig because I really liked the word action. What a great word. Why don't you guys say action real quick? It's pretty cool, right? Now say it in the worst possible way. Say it with a negative connotation. Can't really be done, right? Person of action. Let's snap to action. Lights, camera, action. It's just a great word. Every time I'm fishing, every time I hook a fish, I shout, action! It's awesome. I love it. I also love the word creative. You know, you can't say that in a bad way either. She's a nice girl, it's just that she's too creative. Doesn't really work, right? And I think the words are synonymous, they work together. So that's what we'll talk about a little bit. So in my sport, and for those who do sports similar to ours, believe it or not, we don't call our sports extreme sports. To us, what we do is not extreme. And ironically, the type of sports I do have evolved to be called action sports. I was calling it action sports years before it started entering the public. So that's a nice touch as well. And we've actually got quite a bit in common, I think, with creative professionals. And it's one of the reasons that a lot of action sports athletes end up doing what I'm doing, which is in film production, in photography, and all that kind of stuff. So what are the things we have in common? Well, first of all, this probably sounds familiar. When you're starting out, you have to find creative ways to earn a living. Does that sound right? Also, we have to be creative to succeed, and we have to take action to succeed. Without those two things, we don't succeed. Okay? So consider your typical ball and stick sports. Okay? Now, I love those sports. I did them growing up. But fairly quickly, I got bored, especially because I'd already been introduced to kayaking. Okay? with your typical sports, you have regulation equipment, you have a set of rules, you have the same team, you do it for the same amount of time, and you use set techniques that are coached over and over and over again. And guess what? It's all contained within the proverbial box every time. Okay, so now imagine a whitewater kayaker out in the mountains, staring at a waterfall, imagining the line that he's going to take. Or imagine a skateboarder staring at a flight of stairs, and he's picturing the move that he's about to spend weeks trying to perfect. Or a snowboarder looking at some obscure little hump in the snow and imagining the twists and flips that he's going to do through the air. I personally believe that that takes a great deal of creativity, and it requires action to activate that activity, that creativity, okay? In order to be successful at these sports, you have to be working toward doing something new. It's all we focus on all the time. It's the new. It's the innovative. It's doing what hasn't been done before, and we do it over and over and over again, and we become desensitized at taking those actions. So we're able to push that limit a little further and a little further each time. So it's like jumping off a cliff into a pool of water, okay? Even though you know the water's deep enough, you stand at the edge of the cliff and you hesitate and you're terrified, okay, the first time. You jump. Then you say, oh, let's do it again. And by the fourth time, you're not at all nervous. By the fifth time, you're talking about doing a backflip. It's just like that, right? So wouldn't it be cool if there was a way that we could practice taking that kind of leap of faith, okay? Wouldn't it be cool if we could practice making the decision to trust our decisions, okay? So let's picture a hypothetical idea here, okay? So imagine a stadium. Imagine that football stadium. Now, don't look at the pitch. We're not looking at the pitch. That's not what we're there for. Look around you and look at this place. Be creative. If you look at a stadium, it's a world of opportunity for cool creativity, okay? You could base jump off the top. You could set up some kind of ramp course and bike down the stadium seating. And if there was an arch over the top, you could tie a piece of rope to the center of the arch. You could string it all the way to the edge of the stadium, and you could do a giant rope swing right across the entire stadium. Oh, and better still, you could do that in a kayak, right? Now, a lot of people, I doubt you guys, would say, well, why would you do that? And what if the rope breaks? You could die. Okay? So, yep, I guess that's a dumb idea. Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit to growing up in South Africa. So growing up in South Africa for me was a simple and good life. Okay, yes, it was during the apartheid era and the following economic sanctions that existed there. So I had the so-called disadvantage of very little access to equipment and very few mentors that could tell me what could be done in a kayak. But then I also had the distinct advantage of having nobody who could tell me what couldn't be done. So right away, I was forced to innovate. I started practicing the dark art of learning by doing. And yes, there was some bad kind of action along the way. I've survived to tell the tale. So in my early teen years, I came across this photograph. It was a photocopy of Paris Match magazine. It was reporting on a story of a French expedition on the world's biggest rapids, the Inga Rapids on the Congo River. And this was the last photograph ever taken of them before everybody on the expedition vanished. Right around the same time, I came across this photograph in our local newspaper. It was of a guy called Marco Begni. There he is. He's going off this waterfall, and I remember clearly running into the kitchen and telling my dad, Dad, I'm going to do this waterfall one day, even though the article was about how he had broken 3 ribs doing it. So, incidentally, just after that, at about 14 years old, I landed my first kayak sponsor, and it's ironic. It was called Arrow Advertising and Creative Marketing. Boy, did they have a good vision. So about 10 years after seeing that photograph, I successfully ran that waterfall. That was during my college days. And after college, I sold my 1964 Ford Cortina for $100, and I bought a bus ticket up to Zimbabwe and I decided to go work on the Zambezi River there, and my job was to film people going rafting every day. I was given a video camera, and after my first month of kayaking on the river and filming every day, I collected my first paycheck of $3,500, which was more than both my parents' salary at the time. So that's when I realized, okay, there's another way of doing things here. Probably not going to use my college education in biochemistry and microbiology. So that went on for a little while, and then I was noticed by a kayak manufacturer in Canada who invited me over to the US to compete in a freestyle kayak competition circuit. And after about 4 years of that, I was invited on a very landmark expedition in Tibet. It's on a river called the Yarlung Sangpo, and the goal was to run the deepest gorge in the world through the Himalayas in the middle of winter so that the water would be low. So that's us actually doing a 9-day portage around one of the waterfalls. That didn't go. But this was a huge opportunity for me. I was an up-and-coming kayaker, and I was really given a chance by the expedition leader, Scott Lindgren. This was the first time that I truly paddled into the unknown. It was also the first time that I saw an impossible task broken down into little pieces and then implemented. Okay? There had been previous attempts on this river that had failed with drownings, so the odds were stacked against us. We got through there, and during that time it was very reflective for me. At the time I was just thinking to myself, you know, I have pressure from the outside to get a real job. I started thinking, what am I going to do after this? This kayaking thing's been really great. It's a pastime I wanted to do for a little while, but now it's time to go get that real job. And on the last night of the trip, we were all sitting around the fire, and we'd been on the river for 37 days. We'd heard no music. We hadn't seen ourselves in the mirror, eating minimal. I think I'd lost 17 pounds, which I could do with right now, actually. And one of the guys, we were all sitting silently, just staring at the fire, and out of the blue, he just started quoting a quote by Sterling Hayden from a book called The Wanderer. I won't give you the whole quote, but I'll give you a few lines. It starts by saying, "To be truly challenging, this voyage that we call life must be based upon a firm foundation of financial unrest." I went, It goes on to talk about how people in the pursuit of security will fling their lives beneath the wheels of routine. And then ends off by saying, where then lies the answer? In choice. Bankruptcy of pocket or bankruptcy of soul? Well, at the time, that's all I needed as a moment of incitement to decide what I was going to do. It was the kick in the pants I needed, and it was right there that I decided I was going to go take a look at this Congo expedition, because now I had a taste for achieving the impossible. Okay, so let's see where we are here. All right, so after that, we end up in front of the very same wave where that last photograph of the ill-fated French expedition was taken. Now, to best explain a little bit more about kayaking, for you guys to get a grasp of it and understand the expedition, let's just watch the trailer to the film that I made about the project. Spoiler alert, we all made it. But what you guys witnessed there was these extreme sports guys experiencing real trepidation before the fact. Okay, we're experiencing a bit of the fear that once you take that first step, the journey will take on a life of its own and you won't be able to stop. It's kind of like peeling out into a huge river and it's sucking you downstream. You're unable to stop. Perhaps even the fear of success, right? And there's also a central question in there. How do you prepare for something that's never been done before? Well, I specialize in doing things that have never been done before, and I can tell you that, quite frankly, you can't fully prepare for that. All you can do is use a set of tools that you have at your disposal, and you can take the first step. And once you take the first step, that step teaches you how to take the next step. That's all there is to it. Okay, so you just got to take that first step. Now, what are the tools to take that first step? Well, everybody has their own set of tools. All of you are in different professions, and you have different tools for the job, I guess, or for your personal life. For me, in kayaking, the set of tools is 5. First of all, equipment. I use the best equipment. Okay. Then, physical well-being. I make sure that I'm physically prepared for a project. okay? Then there's the location. You pick the best possible facility for what it is you're trying to do, okay? So the Congo River. Now, those three are the easiest boxes to check, and then you use those tools to actually develop the other two, which are your skills and your experience. Okay, so you got your set of tools, you're trying to take action. But what's the biggest inhibitor of taking action? The biggest inhibitor of action is fear, okay? Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, and my personal favorite, fear of success, okay? So I'm not the biggest expert on fear, but I do know a little bit about risk. So what I do is I just translate fear equals risk. Because to me, risk is accessible. You can assess the risk of your actions, and you can demystify those risks. We can mitigate a lot of risks in everything we take simply by understanding them. And the way we understand them is we take that overall goal and we slice it down into the little pieces. We make it into little attainable chunks, and we take them on one at a time, and one leads to the other, right? So once we do that, we often find that no matter how daunting something is, often it's not nearly as risky as we think, okay? We've broken down our goal, and we find that it's actually not risky, but at the same time, we should allow ourselves to have a little risk, okay? Humans aren't inherently risk averse. We evolved by taking risks. There can be risk as long as you understand it, okay? So now you've understood the risk, okay, and you want to go, you're all motivated, let's take action. Well, how do you take that first step? Okay, well, for me, the first step is reconnaissance or scouting. Okay, so I think you guys might call that a viability study or something. Let me give you an example of my first step, which is the bird's eye view. You look at it from 20,000-foot view of what the project is, and you're basically trying to decide if you're even going to move forward. You guys want one? So the idea of overview reconnaissance for me is to remove the if factor. Okay, the first thing I want to decide is, am I doing it or not? As soon as I've removed the if, I can focus on how I'm actually going to do it, and what are the steps at hand, okay? And by the way, while I'm on that flight there, my email's blowing up, my texts are blowing up, not answering calls, all of that. So it's a good example. You're in the doing phase now. You're in the doing phase, and you clear out all that other junk, and you get on with the job at hand. You can't fly with one hand and do texting while flying right there. So once I've done the overview, then I start to narrow down the scout and start focusing on the actual challenges, okay? So here's a nice drop up in Quebec, okay? And let me explain to you how I break down a rapid once I get to it. Okay, these are the rapids on the project. Here's my little pointer. The first thing I do is I look at the goal. That's that pool over there. That's where I want to be, okay? The next thing I do is I slice this horizontally, okay? And I start breaking it down into those chunks. So if I zoom in here, that's the top part of the rapid. We find that even an intermediate kayaker, if they looked at that drop on its own, they would say, yeah, that's pretty doable, it's not too bad. Then they look at the next part of it, and they say, oh, that's actually pretty straightforward, as long as they aren't looking at what's above it or what's below it. So we can see how we interlink the pieces together. Then you look at the bottom one, you say, yeah, that's pretty impressive, but it's a total straight shot, there's actually nothing to it. So suddenly, rather than looking at the overall scheme and becoming terrified, we've broken it down horizontally. But the job's not done there, okay? Once we've broken it horizontally, we slice the problem vertically, okay? What I need to do on any project I work on is establish exactly what path I'm going to be on, okay? So within a rapid, I want to eliminate all of the dangers that don't affect me. If I'm over here and there's a deadly feature there, I don't need to think about that deadly feature. It has nothing to do with me, okay? But if that deadly feature is unavoidable and it's in my path, well, then it's too risky. I don't do it, okay? So it's like you're walking on a path like this next to a cliff. You're walking along. You don't need to worry about the cliff. It's over there, and you just focus on the path where you're walking, okay? But if the path turns and goes toward the cliff, well, then you just stop. It's that simple, really, okay? Okay, so we're on our mission now. So what happens when things start to go wrong? Well, in kayaking, we don't get to stop. We don't get to panic. We don't get to turn back. And what that teaches us is that when the unexpected occurs, we can't just panic and stop. We have to deal with the problem. We need to address it, and we need to keep going because the river is going with or without us. Okay? But fortunately, as with life, if we zoom back a little bit, perhaps to before I've even got into the kayak, so back to the decision phase, then we can take a look at it and we can say, hey, this is an obstacle that we're not too happy with. There might be an alternative here. Do we back out of the whole project, or do we find creative ways over or around those obstacles? We don't always have to go through the obstacles. When we run a river, the idea is to descend the river at river level. If there's a portage, we portage. So I'm going to give you an example here. This was on the first descent of the headwaters of the Hudson River in upstate New York last year. Great little project, and we found ourselves in a situation where we were in a gorge with unrunnable rapids. Now, rather than turn off the cameras for the show we were shooting, and rather than back out and take the trail around the gorge, we decided to stay in the gorge and get creative with getting down this river. And I think it produced one of the more entertaining little sections of the just crawl through the rocks next to the rapid. I think that was pretty cool. So for some, that could have been a deal breaker, but you should be certain always that when you encounter these obstacles, you exhaust all options before you give up on the project, okay? Give up, you say? Well, don't they say never give up? That's true. Some do say that. Well, we're canceling that statement. We no longer say never give up. We say don't give up too easily. This photograph is one of the most published kayaking photographs of all time, certainly of my project, but it's actually of a failure. The goal here was to rappel down Victoria Falls and try to run the rapids at the very base of the falls. And once we got down there, we encountered the unexpected. There was far too much wind and spray for us to even kayak at all, so we had to fall back on plan B, which was to climb with our kayaks 300 feet back up the rope. Okay? But guess what? It produced this photograph, which is awesome, and a great TV show about us not accomplishing our goal. Okay? So yeah, you know, if you're unwilling to give up, it inhibits experimenting. A lot of people will not take that step because they don't want to fail, they don't want to have to give up. But to me, I believe it's far better to give up after a good effort. And if you give up after a good effort, you don't have to feel guilty about giving up. It's much better to know that something doesn't go than to sit there wondering whether it would have gone or not. Okay, so let's jump back quickly now. We've learned a few lessons. Let's jump back to my stadium idea. I'm stuck on that. Okay, so let's talk about the first tool, our equipment. So if we wanted to do this giant stadium swing in a kayak, okay, everybody's saying, what if the rope breaks? Well, the first thing we'd use is good equipment, right? So we would use a rope that is thousands of pounds heavier than it needs to be, and there's absolutely no way that it'll break. Okay, so we eliminate the what if factor. Now we change our what if to how, and we simply ask the more important question, which is, how long should that rope be in order for us not to hit the ground as we're swinging through? Okay, and once we're done swinging, how would we get from the end of the rope back onto the ground? Okay, now these are pretty manageable problems. With a few simple calculations, you can figure out that, as crazy as this idea seems, it's actually not that bad. It's not even that risky, all right? So, should we give it a go, right? There's our stadium, South Africa. So I wish they'd let me do that during the Super Bowl. That would be nice. So the way that came about is a friend of mine who specializes in gorge swings, where you string up a cable across a gorge and you attach a big rope swing. He saw the stadium being built and he thought, man, that would be cool. He called me up and said, hey, I'm proposing that we do this as a commercial operation and we need to do a demo. all right? And within an hour, we were there strapping it on, getting done. And what we found out that as crazy as this idea seems, it's not that risky at all. It's scary, but it's not risky, okay? In fact, it's so safe that that has now become a fully fledged commercial operation. Yes, hundreds of people go there and they take that leap of faith. They take that plunge. They've found a way to practice taking action. And when those people get off that swing, guess what the most common thing they say is? Man, it really just wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. And you know what? I feel like if I can do that, I can do anything. If you guys did that this morning, I wonder what your day would look like for the rest of today. Okay? So we need to find a way to practice taking action. For me personally, I go kayaking, I go mountain biking, I do a few different sports. I like to use sports to keep the wheels turning, to practice doing things I've never done before. Even if others have done them before, that's okay. So we desensitize ourselves to the act of taking action. When I'm doing a lot of kayaking, I do better at business. I get stuff done more because I'm in the groove and I have no fear of taking chances. I have no fear of success. I have no fear of failure. So really, I should just kayak more. So in life, we're always presented with these opportunities to take action. Okay, so whether they're meaningless, like going and kayaking on the Congo River, or whether they're meaningful, like changing the world, we have these opportunities to take action. Now, you guys are the people of action. You guys aren't the talkers of the world because you're creatives. Okay, creative and action are synonymous. You can't be creative without taking action. It doesn't exist. Okay, and action benefits greatly from creativity. Creativity makes for better actions. So that's where you guys sit. So if you're one of those people who thinks stuff like, you know, why haven't other people done it? Stop thinking that. Just think, why don't you be the person to do it? Okay? Let me just find my place here real quick. Okay, so that reminds me of a quote once again. Let me skip forward to one more pic. That's the Sang Po again in Tibet. We got to carry the Explorers Club flag. That flag's been to the deepest point in the ocean. It's been on a spacewalk and all of that. And it reminds me of another one of those quotes from that very same quote by Sterling Haynes, another line out of there. And that is, I've always wanted to sail the seven seas, but I can't afford it. What these men can't afford to do is not to go. So that's where you guys are. And speaking of affording to go, you guys are sitting here going, okay, cool. This is great theoretical stuff. I have all these great ideas. How do we pay for it? How's this guy paying for his adventures? Okay? It's pretty simple. Okay? And I like to think that if I can get my adventures funded, which are pointless, to be perfectly honest, okay, then you guys can get all your ideas funded. Okay? People have said to me, what are you going to do when you're done being a pro kayaker? I'm like, when I'm done being a pro kayaker, anything else I choose to do is going to be easy. Okay? It's not the biggest sport in the world. So all you need is a recipe. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by a recipe. Now, every profession's different. Every project within every profession is different. Each project I work on, I use a completely different recipe. But one of my favorite recipes ever was this one. It was in 2002. It was the idea of Scott Lindgren, a mentor of mine. And I've tried to emulate this type of recipe in every project that I've done ever since, so for 13 years. And I've never done exactly the same thing, but it's been similar. And basically what he did, he said, okay, I've got this idea. I'm going to go do the deepest gorge in the world. Went to the Explorers Club, got their endorsement. That's always a nice touch. He went to Outside Magazine. He said, okay, guys, I'm going to let you guys be a presenting sponsor of the film I'm going to make about this expedition. Furthermore, I'm going to let you guys have the exclusive story for your magazine. What you guys are going to give me in return for that is 13 full-page ads for me to sell. And I think you guys know what full-page ads are worth. So that was a lot of money. He then said, now can you please connect me to General Motors, which they did. And he went there to them and he said, I have 13 full-page ads which are yours, whether or not we succeed at this project. I'm dividing it into 4 parts. You can pay a quarter of the value and you can have a quarter of the ads. In addition, I'll do a time buy on NBC for the film and you'll be present in the NBC show as well. And the guys at General Motors said, okay, how's about we take all 4 slots and we add 300 grand on top of that for you to fly a 747 cargo jet with 3 Chevy Avalanches over to Tibet. So off we went. Okay, as it turned out, nobody died. Project went well, 12-page article in Outside Magazine. They got their ads, 1-hour show on NBC, time by. And the project was a great success. So that just, I think, is a little example of the kind of thinking that you guys can do if you want to activate an idea. Okay, so I'll skip forward 13 years to my most recent project, which I did just this spring. The goal here was to hike 17 miles, 90-pound kayaks, over Tuolumne Pass into the Merced River for the first ever legal kayak descent in Yosemite National Park. Turns out until this point, kayaking has been a crime in Yosemite. So how do you do that? Well, there's a lot of permitting, not to mention that I want to make a film about it. Those are not easy to get. This all costs a lot of money. So we just did a simple thing. I'll spare you the fine details, but we went to Outside TV. They need content. We went to Jeep Cars. They're looking for a cool ad campaign. We pull it all together. They're providing Outside with ad dollars, Outside subcontracting my production company to produce the content. I get to go run the river. Yosemite gets to open up kayaking on the park. American Whitewater, who advocated for the access, gets to have a great success, and it's a win-win for everybody. So basically, you're looking for a win-win recipe. So just for interest's sake, I'll play you guys the teaser, little teaser to that project. It's a 6-part series, and we'll sort of start wrapping it up here. And by the way, that is the Merced River through Yosemite right there. So that's Yosemite Valley. We hiked over that pass up to about there, and then we kayaked down through there. And that just happened. I finished editing this on Tuesday.
Sometimes home is just a place to leave. We get lost simply to find our way. Are often worth sharing. We team up and separate. Friendship, we share our stories. Television and Jeep Renegade, the lost valley of the Merced.
So you guys are actually the first audience ever to watch that. You'll probably be sick of seeing it pop up on your Hulu every time you're trying to watch The Voice. You're welcome. So I was asked in a phone interview a couple of days ago, why you and Pat? Pat's the guy who did that. Why are you and Pat Keller? Why was it you guys and nobody else? And I said, actually, it reminds me of the back of a T-shirt that I read while I was walking onto a plane a while back. And it said, it's not because we were the only ones that could, it's because we're the only ones that did. All right? So if you're one of those people who says, well, why has nobody done it? Don't ask that question. Just be the person to do it. So that's the end for me. I'm going to leave you guys with one little mantra for your day that was given to me by my production ninja over there. Thank you, Alexa. Okay, so you guys are going to say after me. You guys ready for this? I have a goal for today. Same as every other day. I'm going to drink Red Bull. Come on, guys. Okay, scratch that part. I'm going to be sexy. And I'm going to get shit done. That's your goal for today. Can't believe you guys couldn't verbalize that.
Awesome, Steve.
Fischer.
Thanks so much. That was so much fun. I know we're a little tight on time, so if you need to leave, that's totally fine. But we're going to do 2 or 3 questions with Steve while he's here. So raise your hand. He can call on you.
Hello?
I'll run the mic to you, and we'll do that.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Terrence Fernandez, and before I get to my question, I came this morning, I was wondering to myself, what will I have in common with you, because I don't really swim very well, and I've only been on a kayak once, but then I just found out that I used to own a Ford Cortina.
Nice. Best
yeah.
car ever made.
Yeah, the round light version, so I took my risk with that car. I guess my question is when you told your dad that you were going to kayak the Deepdale Fall, what did he tell you? And how has things changed with you now that you're a dad?
Yeah, actually, I had written in my talk before, and I forgot to say it, was that his response was, well, son, if you work hard and practice a lot, one day you'll do it. That's exactly what he said at the time. He's always been very supportive of my activities. He himself raced motorcycles and still does today, actually. He still owns a 1969 Triumph Bonneville 650 that he bought brand new, and it used to have its own bedroom in the house. So, so that's kind of vibe I grew up in. So. But to the other part of your question, how has being a dad affected? It's absolutely affected me. You know, I've waited fairly late in life to have a kid. And I've had little Lucas there, and any parents here would know that that feeling you feel is impossible to describe until it happens. And even when I got married, I promised my wife that I would find the safe way home. Okay, that was after the Congo, by the way. And believe it or not, there are ways to do these type of sports without risking your life, at least knowingly. Of course, things can go wrong, but things can go wrong in any part of life. But I won't take any risk. I won't run any rapid where I know that the consequence of a mistake is death. Okay, I've personally witnessed 3 drownings. I've resuscitated 2 people. I've kept a guy alive for 6 minutes breathing for him underwater. I know the dangers of what I do, and I don't have any part of that. So that's why when I go on a project like this Merced project, I bring a guy like Pat Keller along. He's currently, I believe, the world's best kayaker. And he's just, if it's runnable, he's running it. So we get to those rapids, I'm like, cool, I'll see you at the bottom, I'll be doing safety. The pressure is off me. I've earned my living, I've accomplished my goals as a kayaker. Obviously, I still love to kayak, so I love to be on those projects like the Merced, but a big part of that accomplishment there is the filmmaking aspect. So that's where I really put my focus now, and that's where I find my satisfaction. Because I've run so many rivers that by the time I get to the end of, say, that Merced project, I'm like, you know, the kayaking part probably registered a 2 out of 10 for me in terms of satisfaction. Getting the day we got the film permit was probably a 10 out of 10. You know, it's like when you lose the keys and then you find them. It was like that kind of celebration. And then for the future, for my future career, you know, having gotten those film permits and pulled off a project like that, that's something that I'm proud of and that I carry with me moving forward. So with regard to the little young buck, I'm not taking the chances I used to. There was a time when, you know, I was pretty blasé about life and death, but that's all changed. And it changed before he came along, so good timing. Who else we got? Yes.
Can you just repeat the name of the author you're quoting, please?
Sterling Hayden. Sterling Hayden, and it's from a book called The Wanderer. If you Google The Wanderer, Sterling Hayden, that quote's probably his most famous. It starts with "to be truly challenging," and goes on from there. A nice quote. You know, that end question was, where then lies the answer in choice, bankruptcy of pocket or bankruptcy of soul? And at the time, I really took that as like an endorsement for me to have no cash and for me to be failing to pay my student loan, okay? and it's what I needed at the time. I was like, I don't need money, I just need to do the things I want to do. Well, you know, reality is reality. We all have bills to pay now, but as I've learned subsequently, you can actually have both. I think that you can find a nice balance point there, but it was a great motivator for me at the time. Yes.
Last question.
So when you're getting sucked into a whirlpool,
Something like
what happens in either in your mind, in your spirit? What do you go through?
Well, if in the full movie, there's a point where I actually do come very close to drowning, and I actually had a compressed air canister in my life jacket, and I was under the water, you know, having paddled for like 15 minutes straight hard. I was really out of breath to start with. Then I went down and I was underwater for over a minute, and once I popped up for the first time, I was still in the water for another 50 minutes, going down rapids. So it was a pretty terrible experience, and there was a point where I thought, I knew the reality of my situation. And I was actually more just really disappointed. I was like, okay, well, this is just lame. It's kind of the way I felt. But one thing that really stuck with me was we had this air canister. We had tested a bunch. We had flipped over in our kayaks, breathed it. You can get about 10 to 15 breaths out of it. So you take a breath and you hold your breath, blow it out, take another breath. And in theory, it was all there. But I was under the water knowing I had it. And the step from holding your own breath to realizing, okay, you're done, and then letting it out and taking that first breath, I never anticipated how difficult that step was going to be, because at that point, you've given up, it's off you, and now you're relying on this little device, and it may or may not work. It's not a perfect device. So that was a very traumatic experience, and a lot changed for me for the rest of my life. A lot changed right there. You know, I realized that, you know, drowning is not that cool. So so yes, your perspective changes with your experience, and it doesn't take one particular experience. I think it takes an accumulation. So, for example, I was involved in a failed rescue a couple of years ago now, and the friend who ended up drowning, and although it was in itself no worse than previous encounters, the fact that it was another one, it was like an accumulated poison. And I actually didn't kayak for 6 months after that, and even now I still think about it a lot. And you know, it's not something I want. It's not something I want for the loved ones around me. And you know, you'll hear from extreme sports athletes. You'll hear, you know, the risk, the reward outweighs the risk. And I actually wrote a whole article about it, and I called bullshit on it. I said, no, it doesn't. Nothing's worth your friend dying and calling their parents and telling them about it. So that's all changed for me, and I've no intention of risking my life again, ever. So on that happy note,
let's give Steve a round of applause.